This is the story of Cotuit, a small Cape Cod village that looks out across Nantucket Sound, leading to the Atlantic Ocean. While many people know of and visit Cotuit, few know of the significant role that this sleepy little village has played in the history of America. The Wampanoag Indians, who first gave the name to the area, claim that Cotuit refers to the council place where neighboring tribes meet. Less than 30 years after he arrived on the Mayflower in Plymouth, in 1648, Miles Standish bought Cotuit from Wampanoag Chief Sachem Pop Manucky for 2 brass kettles. In 1658, John Alden added a hoe to the payment, and the English assumed they were obtaining full title for all time. The Wampanoag had a difference in understanding as to the agreement reached with the English over who actually owns the land. The Wampanoag thought they would be sharing the land under a rental agreement. As with the settlement of many other towns and villages across the country, this issue has never been fully resolved. The first settlers arrived not long after these initial negotiations, and they've been coming ever since. Cotuit's first settlers were farmers, probably attracted by the salt hay meadows to pasture cattle, and the fertile soil where Indians had grown corn, fertilized by the abundant herring in the Santuit River. In 1739, Ebenezer Crocker moved his house from West Barnstable to its present location at the corner of Route 130 and Route 28. He consequently built nearby homes for his sons, Alvan, Zenas, and Heman. This was the first Cotuit Santuit settlement. A tavern, post office, library, and grocery store were located in those houses as well. By the early 1800s, Cotuit had established itself as a working seaport on the south side of Cape Cod. Its protected harbor became a shipping center, as well as a connecting point for travel to and from Nantucket. Cotuit villagers depended on goods from the nearby island, and Nantucket settlers increasingly relied on firewood from the forests around Cotuit to replace their own depleted supply, as well as bricks from the Barnstable brickworks. Through the 1800s, Cotuit went through a significant expansion as a seafaring community. Most of the village houses were built between 1830 and 1880, and by mid-century there were about 150 households. Virtually every home in Cotuit in the mid-1800s was involved in seafaring in some way. Cotuit men were sea captains, able seamen, fishermen, whalers, shipbuilders, ship owners, barrel coopers, ship painters, etc. There were over 40 captains' houses in the village at that time. Approximately 20 of them belonged to whalers, whose voyages could take them around Cape Horn and across the Pacific Ocean, all the way to the Bering Sea. Many Cotuit captains were engaged in coastal trade from New Orleans and Brazil to Maine, while others also followed the route around Cape Horn to be involved in the China trade, and some to carry men and supplies to the California gold rush. In 1846, Cotuit's captains funded the construction of the Union Church, the first federated church in the nation, which provided worship for Methodists, Baptists, and Congregationalists. The white church on the hill, built by local builder James Childs, Jr., is today's Mariners Lodge. When the railway came down from Boston in 1856, the West Barnstable train station, just 7 miles away from Cotuit by stagecoach, became an important link between the village and the outside world. With the increase in transportation, the local cranberry bogs became profitable ventures. Use of cranberries in cooking had been a gift from the Indians to the Plymouth settlers of 1620. In the 1880s, Cotuit entrepreneurs realized the potential of cranberry cultivation, and at its peak, several dozen Cotuit families built, owned, and operated cranberry bogs in Cotuit and the surrounding communities. Cape Cod cranberries became the basis for the Ocean Spray brand cooperative, which today accounts for 80% of the cranberries grown in the United States. While cranberry culture and Ocean Spray actually began in Dennis and Harwich, many Cotuit growers were part of the Ocean Spray cooperative, and several served on its board of directors. Oyster cultivation was another cottage industry which started and flourished in Cotuit once the railroad came south. In 1857, Captain William Childs started packing oysters in barrels and carting them to West Barnstable Rail Station for shipping to Boston and New York. By the 1870s, 6 additional oyster growers farmed the bottom of Cotuit Bay. In 1912, the independent growers were consolidated into the Cotuit Oyster Company, which to this day enjoys a worldwide reputation among oyster connoisseurs. The railroad also brought visitors to the village. Cape Cod's first resort hotel, the Santuit House, was opened in Cotuit by Martha and Braddock Coleman in 1860. It was an expansion of the popular rooming house they had operated above Ropes Beach for the benefit of passengers on their way to and from Nantucket. The Coleman family also owned a nearby wharf and a warehouse. Both served the needs of the seafaring expeditions that sent Cotuit seamen worldwide. Some of Cotuit's summer visitors also stayed on to build houses of their own. One of the first of these was Augustus T. Perkins, whose wealth came from the China trade, and who built Sandanwood in 1863. It still stands on a bluff overlooking Cotuit Harbor. Perkins' choice of the popular French Mansard roof design was copied by other Boston Brahmins, and Cotuit now has more of this style of architecture today than any other village on the Cape. One group of visitors was particularly noteworthy. From the period of about 1880 to 1940, Cotuit became known as the Summer Harvard because of its many Harvard visitors. President A. Lawrence Lowell summered here. Among the Harvard professors he attracted were the Pulitzer Prize-winning historian Edward Channing, James Hardy Ropes of the Harvard Divinity School, already writing here, attracted Kersop Lake, professor of the Old Testament. Medical school professors Algernon Coolidge, father and son, were long-time summer residents. The famous economist Frank Taussig summered here, as did William Morse, Harvard's purchasing agent, and Harvard's philosopher-poet George Santayana often visited. With the expansion of railways in America by the middle of the 1800s, and the increasing use of steam over sail, Cotuit's shallow harbor gave way to larger ports with better rail connections. Tourism became the predominant feature of the economy, and soon the Santuit House was joined by 2 other hotels, the Pines and the Central House. A busy village center developed about 1900, with a hardware store, a grocery, a butcher shop, a barber, a blacksmith, and even a photo shop. But Cotuit's buildings had always been built of wood, including its churches and historic Freedom Hall. Recognizing the need for fire protection, a volunteer fire department was formed in 1912. In 1913, the Cotuit Fire Department bought a Model T Ford chemical fire engine, which was the first piece of motor-driven fire apparatus of any kind on Cape Cod. But chemical firefighting proved inadequate, and the village grocery store burned to the ground in 1924. The village's leading citizens decided that water was needed. An independent fire district was created in 1926, and water mains were laid. This led to the creation of a water department and the protection of well fields behind the village. The beginnings of a municipal government took place. In World War II, Cotuit's young men built barracks at nearby Camp Edwards and then went off to war. Women found work as clerks and secretaries at the military base. Cotuit's Camp Can-Do-It trained amphibious warriors, whose landing craft later established beachheads in the Pacific. Post-war Cotuit was much changed. The last hotel, the Pines, closed in 1958 and was torn down. The Cotuit Inn struggled on until 1986. Many of the neighborhood stores had given way to residential zoning. The hardware store closed. So did the butcher shop and the barber. Most of the businesses moved out to Route 28, where the Cahoon Museum of Modern Art and the evolving Cotuit Center for the Arts have since become the cultural focal point of the village. Cotuit's maritime spirit lives on in the highly informal Cotuit Mosquito Yacht Club, which has minimal dues and no clubhouse. Founded in 1906, the club was one of the first organizations in the country where women held elective office. The club races the 14-foot Cotuit skiff, a locally designed and much-loved catboat capable of challenging the most skilled saltwater sailor. About 90 Cotuit skiffs are still in use today. On Main Street, in front of the village library, there's a sign that reads, Cotuit. It also features an ancient kettle and a hoe, reminders of this beautiful village's rich and varied history.